Welcome to Startup Hack. Today we're going to talk about why most companies hire junior developers instead of senior developers. And let me give you a little spoiler alert, it's not only about salary. So let's dig in and get started. Welcome to Startup Hack. My name is Spencer Tomlinson. I am the CEO and co-founder of CleanRouter as well as many other products. Here are some lessons that I've learned building a successful business while challenging startup norms. My challenge is to push you to rethink startup success. Welcome to Startup Hack. All right, let's go ahead and dig in and get started. So we're going to talk about why most companies hire junior developers instead of senior developers. And, honestly, I've hired a lot of different people over the last 10 to 15 years. And I've really found that this article, what they're talking about, that a lot of it's true. But I think there's some really good talking points here, and I wanted to talk about my response to some of these points. So, although it's not totally accurate that companies hire junior developers more than senior, so it's tough to make a blanket statement. But junior developers being more likely to be hired versus senior developers. However, it's likely that the use case for junior developers are overall higher in number. So here are a few common reasons why companies hire more junior over senior developers. Now, the very first is obviously about money. A senior programmer usually comes with a lot of really high salary demands. A lot of junior developers just come with more reasonable salary demands. And also just in general, just kind of, we end up finding that you get more ROI on your junior developers. Um, a smaller salary and being very productive allow for greater return. And I think this being very productive part is a really important part of this because I actually find that a junior developer is generally more hungry. Find that a lot of the senior developers can actually be kind of spoiled. So that works for both of you, both ends. Like if you're on the hiring side, I think it works really well for hiring the juniors. And if you're a senior developer, you kind of know you can be a little more picky, and there are those people out there that'll pay the premium. Now, there's also the pyramid structure, which is where you want to only have certain number of senior developers and some mids and some lowers. Some organizations really follow this really strictly. I've actually run into organizations where I've had too many senior developers, and it can cause a problem. And so in that case, you generally are kind of, a lot of people like to structure with a lot of juniors, some mid, and a couple of seniors. Now, this next part is an interesting one because it's talking about that sometimes senior programmers are outdated. And so, it's great that you've been programming for 25 years, but sometimes I really only care about the skill sets you've gained in the last 5 to 7 years. And so, there is definitely there's wisdom that comes with age and with experience. And so, there's definitely like pitfalls where you're gonna be like, man, I remember this time that I built this thing and this happened. And like, you're trying to do that, you're going down a dangerous path. And my developers hear that from me fairly frequently. But in some cases, stuff that I did 10 years ago is not stuff necessarily I'd really want to be using today. The next one is different types of skill sets. It's great that your COBOL developer learned how to program with COBOL 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago, right? But a lot of that's outdated. And so I really like a laser focused set of skill sets. Sometimes somebody who knows 70 different skill sets can go chasing off and be like, well, I remember when TokaDB did this thing and here and I'm like, look, everything's we're building in Microsoft SQL with .NET and so sometimes some of these random skill sets that come along with a long tenure can actually not really help in experience when I'm like, we just need to build this thing as fast as we can. So, that sometimes sometimes a senior developer can be a little bit more like, no, I know this is the tried and true, but I think a junior developer a lot of times will only have a more limited skill set, so they may not be as much. Now, I've also seen junior developers that literally want to learn absolutely every single new shiny thing that comes out, so this can kind of go both ways, but that goes to this next part. Junior developers are definitely more malleable. It's easier to get them to follow best engineering practices like test-driven development than seniors who have gotten away with decades of bad process. Some managers use that for evil. It's easier to get them to work unsustainable hours until they burn out. Products have many more tasks, which are ideal, might slight stretch for junior developers than very senior ones. Now, I am definitely not a fan of the working more than 40 hours a week. I've always touted to my employees that I recognize as a manager that over 40 hours a week means you're putting in subpar quality of work. And so I'm always a firm believer that you hire for 40 hours a week, and that's just like how it works. And so I know I've even looked back at some of my own code that I've looked back at that I've done while I've been hacking a new startup and working all through the night. And I look back and go, that was clearly 2 a.m. code. And so 2 a.m. code is not code you really want in a production environment. So as you're working with these developers, I definitely don't want that to be that I think that malleable means, oh, good, it means I'm going to abuse them. I think malleable just means like, for me, it means like, look, I really like code built this certain way, and I'm the boss at the end of the day. So like, if I'm paying one right in your paycheck, then you kind of need to write it the way that that I think is the best. Now, except for some points where I do like developers to push back. So, no need for a special skill set. Senior developers are highly skilled in a particular technology and would have built that expertise over many years. However, many companies might prefer an individual with an excellent aptitude to pick up multiple technologies versus a high level of knowledge in a particular technology. So this can kind of cut both ways, as we've been talking about. You may look for somebody who's like super good at this thing, but then the other part to that too is they're like, look, I've been doing this certain type of developer for 10 years. I don't really want to change. Whereas a junior developer might be more apt to be like, well, yeah, I'm sure I'll take on another one. So, it kind of can work both ways. So, work is primarily small tasks. So I know there's a lot of times that I'll want to give a user story to a senior developer, and they're like, really? You want me to work on that? That's what you really want me to spend your time on? Whereas a junior developer is going to be like, cool, I'll give you any task you want. And so, there's that kind of works to both these. There's a lot more flexibilities. A junior developer can be taught and groomed to follow companies' best practice more quickly than senior developers. I think there's a saying about old dogs and new tricks. I think that comes into this. So if a company is focused on developing their talent for the long term, they might go for hiring the junior developers. And I think it kind of goes with malleable and the small tasks as well. So lack of options. A senior developer, this kind of goes with the pay. A junior developer might take lower pay because they may just not be getting as many offers, where a senior developer with 20 some years of experience is going to be able to land a job in hours versus days. Past experience, lastly, with the pace of development of technology and new concepts, relevant experience becomes more important than just the total amount of experience. And that's kind of what I've already hit on. I'm really interested in seeing the technology that you've learned and been putting to use in the last 5 years. It's great if you've been building on .NET Core for 20 years like I have. But unless you've stayed up to date with .NET Core 6 and now .NET Core 7 that's in preview mode right now, it's not really doing me a whole ton of good if you've worked on a technology that's 20 years old. So, that past experience can sometimes, not necessarily do a lot. So, one of the things that I definitely wanted to encourage you is, if you are not a developer, it's great to become a junior developer. And as part of our startup hack, our exclusive .NET Web Development Bootcamp. So we offer a full stack .NET Core Bootcamp, and we will have you ready for your first job in 14 to 16 weeks. We help with placement as much as we can. But we guarantee one-on-one instruction. This is really one of the big differentiators between us and other coding boot camps, is that we know that we will get you up and running within 14 to 16 weeks and get you that guaranteed one-on-one instructions. So, so definitely make sure you check this out. Pass this on to friends and families and people start. I know we're currently working on the website right now, and I know the image in the background shows a classroom. It is all virtual, so that way you can do this completely on your own in your own space. And we do work very flexible around times, but we do really look for people who want to put in at least 6 hours a day so that you can hit it in that 14 to 16 weeks. So make sure you check out Startup Hack, like and subscribe to our channel, because we are going to continue to bring you great updates, and that is what we're covering for today. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.